I'd love for you to create the intro song now.
Okay, let's do it.
What should we kick this episode off with?
A bouncy trap song about unsupervised learning.
AI is completely changing the music industry, and no product has been more viral out there than Suno. With over 10 million users having generated songs, and a recent fundraise of $125 million at 500 million, Mikey Schulman, the CEO of Suno, is really at the epicenter of this ecosystem.
Let me tell you one of the coolest nights in my life in the last couple months.
We had a fascinating conversation about where Suno's going, the future of AI and audio.
I try to think very hard, like, what should the future of music look like? I am really excited about
and some of the product and infrastructure challenges they faced as they've scaled to their massive user base. I think folks are really going to enjoy this. Definitely stay tuned for Rashad and my debrief at the end.
Mikey, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start out, I'm sure no one's ever asked you this before, but what's your favorite piece of music that's been created on Suno?
Favorite? That's a tricky one. One of two things. There's a piece that is an Estonian language German lead that for some reason like touches me in ways that I cannot really describe. Don't speak Estonian. Not the genre of music that I'm like particularly into, but I don't know. It does it for me. And so I've probably listened to that one 100 times.
How much have the rest of the Suno users? Are you like 100 of the 100 listens, or is this a pretty popular one?
Maybe 100 of the 500 listens. It's not. Yeah, it's not the most popular song ever, but for some reason it did it for me. There was an incredible amount of care taken by the user who made that to really craft it in a way that I guess was the vision that they had, and for some reason that vision resonated very strongly with me for reasons I can't entirely explain.
It's awesome. I feel like that's the best music a lot of times.
I think so. Yeah, I just love it. I don't have a ton more to say of why I haven't really figured it out yet, but that's, I guess, the beauty of music is like it kind of touches you. It makes you feel. That is why we all love music. And so that one touches me and makes me feel in a certain way.
Yeah. How about of your own creations?
Oh, I do a lot with my son. And so there's a ton that are of songs that are about him in different fantastical situations. One in particular recently of him driving a Zamboni, which 3-year-olds are definitely not allowed to do in the state of Massachusetts. But I think the reason there, I think that those resonate so strongly with me is a little more obvious, which is that it is the experience of crafting music with someone, in particular your son in this case, that it is that whole experience that I'm really drawn to, and not only the final product. And I think there's actually something to that where right now music is really mostly made in service of the final product, of the final song, of the final album, and without a lot of care for the journey. But I think making music with other people is some of the most, if not the most enjoyable moments of my life. And so I think that's really why I love those songs. It is the moment in time that they mark that I will never get back. So I'll go with one of those.
That's amazing. Yeah. Do you get feature requests from your 3-year-old son? Are there things that he wishes the product would do?
Not a ton. Mostly song requests. And then a lot of, I don't like that one for reasons that he can't entirely explain. So we just do them again and again until we get them right.
That's awesome. I love, you'll have to send me the Zamboni one after. That feels,
we can play
I feel like that's a fun, I feel like young kids have such wild imaginations.
Exactly.
To be able to just actualize that.
There's something I think very special about kids, and I don't know if it is their view on the world or the fact maybe they don't have shame yet, but the way that they just interact with music and love to rock out with, spoons for drumsticks or, pretending to play the violin or the trumpet or the tuba or whatever it is. And it is a form of play that adults lose for whatever reason. And that's too bad. And I think part of what we are trying to do is bring that back to adults.
It's so interesting. I feel like that's a common theme in a lot of these AI creator tool companies where, the idea that we all had this imagination at one point and the ability to just kind of dream up fantastical things. And at some point, maybe we were told we're not a great artist or musician, or you have to be this level and to, or use these complex tools. And now to kind of, democratize access to that inner kid within all of us is pretty cool.
Yeah. And bring it out. I think, we talk a lot internally about like paint by numbers as being an experience that like people actually liked, and somehow we've lost touch with sort of a guided creative experience in some way. And I think, again, that is really too bad. I think humans are really hardwired to enjoy these experiences. And there are a lot of, let's say, cultural reasons why these kind of get beaten out of us. And I'm excited to see what happens when we bring these back.
It'll be cool to see as your son gets older too. When he as the evolution of you probably can track a lot about aging just through the evolution of the songs that you guys generate.
100%. I see this very much as like people have asked me before, will you go back and listen to that song in the future, whether it's the Zamboni song I made with my son or the Estonian lead? And the answer is 100%. And people, I think, are a little bit incredulous, but I think like it is totally obvious to me that I'm going to go back and look at pictures in my phone from this time period. And so why wouldn't I listen to those songs the same way? I think we all have songs in our lives that we listen to and they bring us back to a certain moment for whatever reason they are tied to that moment. And I think this is a way to just amplify that.
I mean, I guess, digging into Suno itself, I'm curious, like, how do the people who best use Suno today use it? Obviously, I feel like you have these two classes of users, right? You have folks that are just kind of prompting from scratch, and that's me. I'm the basic user. And then I think you obviously have folks that kind of are doing more advanced things in the product. Like, what does the ideal Suno user look like today for you?
It's a good question. I think I won't say best user. Yeah. I won't pass judgment there. But there's kind of right now two categories. So one is you, and you said basic, and I prefer to think of this more as casual. And that isn't to say casual is not using it a lot, but the use cases are what we like to call soundtracking your life. I am narrating my life musically as happy and sad and funny and memorable things happen to me. And music is a way to tell stories. It is the way humans have been telling stories for a really long time, or a way humans have been telling stories for a really long time. And so there are a lot of people making songs about Starbucks getting your name wrong, or a lot of music gear showing up at your house for, unexpected reasons. And these are funny moments that you will relive. And then there's the second, I would say, more power user, who are people who have found this as an amazing creative outlet, who are enjoying the process of making music. They enjoy the final product also. They enjoy the song, but they are getting lost in the process, and they're sitting down and they have a sound that is in their head, and they have a song that they are trying to make, and they have a story that they're trying to tell. And it may take them 2 hours, but they will tell that story and they will get that out. And I think it's amazing to see the same tool being able to be used for such radically different use cases. It's quite fulfilling.
And for that latter group, like, what have you learned about like the way they end up using it? Because I imagine you release this out in the wild, and it's like, who knows what some of the more sophisticated users will do with it.
A really confirmatory thing for us has been that there are a lot of people with great taste and great ideas in their head musically, and without the means to do it. And that we don't have to be constrained, let's say, by the way things are done now, which is to say you're going to have some complicated piece of production software like Ableton or Pro Tools or Logic or even GarageBand. And those are all amazing tools, but they just have very steep learning curves. And that there are processes that can be reimagined with certain technological breakthroughs that will let people make music in completely different ways. And that's been really great to see come through, that people will actually enjoy the process of making it and use it as a great outlet.
One thing I'm super interested in, I mean, I think you had like 10 million people make songs or some crazy number.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of AI products have this like blank canvas problem where someone shows up for the first time and they're like, what is this tool? Or like, how does this work? And if you can get past that first part, you kind of create your first song, you experience the magic of it, and it grokks and makes intuitive sense. Like, how have you thought about getting like, teaching people how to use the product, or getting around that, like, just the initial, like, where do I begin with a prompt? I feel like so many products have this problem of just a blank screen and kind of maybe being overwhelmed of where to begin.
100%. I don't even think we've solved it, really. I think a lot of people will come and they will see a blank text box, or they will see a text box with an idea in it, and that idea may or may not be applicable to them. And I think, the way it is now is we can have a suggestion there. The way it will be in the future, I think, will hopefully be far more intuitive. And just as an example, we did a Valentine's Day kind of experience for people where you can make a song for your Valentine. And there, the nice part there is that the reason to make a song is sort of obvious. I'm making it for my loved one. And then we can kind of guide you through that process. And I think it's all about getting people to realize that you don't need a reason to make a song. Like, those reasons already exist the same way those reasons exist to send somebody a text message or to take a picture, and that there's more muscle memory in understanding that music is a first-class citizen, honestly, in the world of communication and multimedia and storytelling. So I think there will be a lot of stuff that improves actually in the future for that cold start problem, if you will, of the blank canvas, and one thing I will say is that it's actually funny that in the text world, LLMs are seen as a great way to get over that writer's block, and that somehow that doesn't quite exist yet musically. So I don't know if the amazing thing will be hum the melody that's in your head, tap on the table for the beat that's in your head, what's the last picture you took in your phone, what's on your mind, but like much more intuitive and not like, what would you like to make a song about?
Yeah. No, I think I've heard you talk about this before, where obviously today you're prompting via text, but like there's so many other ways you could prompt into the model. And, it's always like sometimes it's seeing something beautiful that makes us think of a piece of music, or it's, to your point, humming something. And I think it's really interesting to think about the different ways, different entry points that you could have into the underlying music model.
I think the fact that so many AI tools, including ours, are still fairly text-driven is just a sign of how early it still is and how much room there is to grow and impact people and figure out what are the beautiful and intuitive ways people want to interact with this. And I think, it took a long time to figure out how humans would want to interact, let's say, with music on their phones, and so it's totally not obvious to me that we're going to have figured this out, in the first year of doing this. But I am really excited for what happens when you can really remove that barrier for people to making songs to see what they come up with.
Yeah. What are some other, the Valentine's Day one makes so much sense. Why not create something, a piece of music for, for a specific kind of reason? Are there other things that you guys think about of like, oh, this would be other ways we could prompt those first initial uses of the platform?
Yeah, I think all things that are not expressly describing the thing you want to make a song about, because that's the really hard thing, because people don't necessarily know immediately. So it can just be describing your mood. That can still be text-based. But I think there's lots of things around how do we express ourselves through visuals, through sounds, through, there's a ton of people who are building beautiful music, taking sounds from, just their everyday world. They're clinking glasses and they're making TikTok videos about the process of making hit songs out of those things. And I think everybody has that. Everybody finds sounds interesting. And why can't we turn all of these sounds into beautiful music that inspires us? And so we're working on a lot of those things. It should be not too much longer before we have them. Yeah.
I love that. And then obviously, you described as kind of two different types of users. As you think about the more advanced folks that are spending those 2 hours, like, sitting down and really remixing or creating a song, how do you think about like the set of features that you want to build for that set of folks and, where the kind of product goes there?
For the power users, I think it is all about letting people have control over the music to get the sounds that are in their heads. But importantly, that is not, I think, the way it is done today, because those tools are very hard to learn. So it is not like stem out the drums and swap out the snare drum to a clap. That's not how most people are going to think about this. But instead, it is finding all of the ways to let people really pour themselves into it. And I think the real problem with the text box is not even the writer's block of like, what am I going to put in that text box? The real problem is it is a sterile way to describe what you are after. And the real way would be to pour your heart out singing, or to make a montage of a few pictures that you find very moving, or even to figure out how to mood board sounds from your everyday to inspire the model. And so I think if we can let people really pour themselves into it, they will enjoy the journey of making music a lot more. And I'm quite certain that when you enjoy the journey of making music, the recipient of that music enjoys it a lot more. And so that's really like a virtuous cycle for the whole experience of making music for both sides of that conversation.
I've heard you talk a lot about before, obviously, I think you've mentioned some of the most joyous experiences in your life were creating music with other people and this whole kind of shared experience of it. And obviously, I think one thing that's super powerful about Suno is the ability to share songs among like a small group of friends or something. I think we were talking before we started recording that like our fearless producer Rashad, he ships all this stuff to my house, and I have all these boxes for our home podcast studio, and it was just so ridiculous. I had to create him a country song of like why are there so many boxes that are just like on showing up to my house. And I think that is such a powerfully social experience. I'm wondering how you think about that in the context of the actual creation, because I think today, I imagine most of your users are kind of single player creators, like, creating something and sharing it out. How do you think about like, you obviously talked about playing with other people in this process of co-creating. Where does that kind of go in the Suno platform?
Yeah, I think that is going to be a huge focus in the future, is everything, for lack of a better word, everything multiplayer, everything about making music with other people. And that can be synchronously, like you're literally making music together at the same time. That can be asynchronously. So like maybe you send somebody half of a song and they're going to finish it, or maybe you send someone a musical idea and they pass it back to you modified in some way. And I think that, again, music is really a conversation. And so it is entirely reasonable to assume that just like, real conversations in natural language happen synchronously or asynchronously, they happen IRL, they happen over Slack, that there's going to be lots of ways that musical conversation happens. I think we will eventually have things like things that will mimic a jam session, basically, which is like it is a synchronous conversation of I'm going to express some ideas and you're going to react to them, and then you're going to riff on them and I'm going to take it back over, and it is entirely fluid. And the same joyful experience that someone can have around that can be recreated for people who are not experts at playing an instrument. And it's because everybody has taste. And so you could, for example, have some interesting lyrics and have some interesting sounds, and I can take them and I can riff off of that and I can adapt it in some way and I can extend it or I can add to it, and then I can pass it back to you. And at the end, we may have really enjoyed 1 hour of working together, and that was a really fun hour. And maybe we also came out of it with a 5-minute song that we will almost certainly revisit many, many times. And so I think, like you said before, I've said this, like I think the most fun I have ever had on this planet is jamming with my friends. And I think I see no reason that we can't give that to people. And I'll just be clear, like I'm a mediocre musician. I am. That doesn't make me enjoy jamming with my friends any less. And so I don't think I see any kind of technical hurdles to giving people that kind of enjoyment.
Totally. And it's really interesting to think like what, I'm sure there'll emerge a set of people that are really skilled and talented at this, and that becomes, part of like these musicians of the future. And you can imagine even just watching people riff live, obviously it's both a social experience with your small group of friends, but you can also imagine it totally being something that people want to see happen live as well for the folks that are really talented at it.
100%. Let me tell you, one of the coolest nights in my life in the last couple months was realizing that there was a Twitch streamer with a fairly big following streaming to a football stadium sized group of people, just streaming himself for 2 hours doing Suno. And this was amazing. This is a digital concert of sorts. But the amazing thing there is Twitch will let all of the streamers, all of the viewers micropay to interact with the streamer. And so now we've actually gone from like a more sterile digital concert to an interactive one. And I think it was just so powerful to me to realize that like that was bringing together a whole football stadium of people the same way that going to see a football game will bring that stadium full of people together. And so, and that's where the technology is now. And like when we make that kind of a first-class citizen, that kind of group experience, it will get so much more powerful. Totally.
Now you've got my mind racing about like, at sports stadiums, they could totally just play Suno generated songs about what's been happening in the game rather than the classic, fire up the team ones.
100%. And how much cooler would it be if some of the fans can have input in there and maybe some of the players can have input in there? I think that'll be wild. And if you make a song with your favorite athlete, you will feel good. I promise.
I guess moving on to some of the other decisions you made on the product side, my understanding today, like obviously everyone's kind of thinking about pricing AI products, and I think you guys currently, you have kind of a free set of songs, and then for your power users, you kind of charge as they generate more and more songs. How have you thought about pricing here, relative to the cost you guys have, and how do you think about like the business model of Suno and how that evolves?
Yeah, I think I don't have a ton to say here for the following reason, I don't think anyone really knows how this is all going to shake out. I think it is so early, and the way that people are going to enjoy this is going to change. And so we're kind of like actively not trying to innovate on the business model until we really do the important product innovation. I'll say something maybe a little mean, which is to blame you and
you can blame me
for this. I think
hopefully not me personally.
Not you personally. Well, maybe you personally a little bit. I think it is the same people building and investing in AI companies as it was building and investing in SaaS companies a decade ago. And we and everyone else in this game has just kind of almost blindly adapted SaaS pricing to a world that it's not necessarily super relevant to, or it's not tailor-made for it. Like it's not zero marginal cost to make a song. And so, and I think it's entirely reasonable to have done this, but it's probably not what it's going to look like in 10 years. And so I think, and it's also not obvious to me that the way this is for music will be the way this is for text, will be the way this is for video. I think it's going to be so product and use case dependent to figure out how people are actually going to feel like they're getting the right value out of it for their money. So I'm excited to see where it goes. It's like not kind of top of mind for us right now, at least.
I mean, another thing I'm super curious how you do is like model evaluations. Like I imagine, because there's something obviously. I mean, I imagine there's objective things like, probably I've heard you talk before about like the underlying quality of the audio and, but like obviously music can be such a subjective thing too. How do you do eval? And like, no, I mean, I imagine you guys are working on new models. Like, how do you know they're better? Or like, what is the internal process you have?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, it is much harder than the other domains. And in the other domains, it's not straightforward either. So there will be automatic metrics for things like audio quality, and they're pretty flawed. And, we'll measure them and we make sure they get better. But ultimately, one thing we say at the company is aesthetics matter, which is to say squishy metrics are going to exist or intangible metrics are going to exist, and there's going to be judgment calls to be made. And it is important that we have people who truly deeply love music and who enjoy listening to it to be able to evaluate it, because very often things do come down to subjective things. I think this is very different from text, where there are, let's say, benchmarks that all have to do with reasoning and how correct was your output. And music does not have a correct answer. Ultimately, the test for quality is how much do our users love the music that comes out of it. And I think that is super dependent on a bunch of stuff. That is the song quality, like were these like moving and touching songs. But that was also like, did the model produce a song that I wanted it to produce? It's like the amount of control that you have over the music turns out to be a really important metric. And unfortunately, there's like nothing good automatic there. Yeah. So unfortunately, a lot of human eval. Maybe things will get better in the future. I'm actually not quite sure it will, actually.
It's so interesting. I feel like, in a completely different space, we had Beyond, the CTO of SourceGraph, on, and he was saying that, like, look, we spent all this time trying to do evals, but the reality is the best thing we can do is just like release these newer models out and just see like our metrics. We do code completion and we do, other suggestions. And it's like, you can tell pretty quickly, like users will let you know like whether they like a model or not. And you can tell by what they accept, what they accept or how much time they spend in the platform. And I think like, it's interesting to see that happening across the board.
I'll tell you, we have the benefit of a large and engaged user base who will tell us these things both implicitly from we ship a new model and how much does it get used and how much are people liking it, and if we give them choices between models, how much are they choosing model A over model B. But then also explicitly, we have an amazing Discord community of people who will just tell us like, yeah, I think something's wrong. And so grateful to have that community to kind of tell us stuff, or else you can be flying blind sometimes.
Let's say, something is wrong with the model. Like, how do you actually go about like fixing some of these like weird, so someone says, oh, I generated this, or this class of problems that show up in the model. Just not as familiar with like a music model. Like, how would you actually go about, oh, this thing we don't love about the underlying model, we'd love to make it better in, X use case or whatnot?
It is unfortunately very case dependent. I don't think there are great rules because everything is so subjective here. And so, as an example off of the top of my head, maybe we shipped a model that tended not to end songs reliably enough. And so like there would just be like way too long outros or like a bunch of silence at the end of these things. And then usually after you diagnose it, in those cases, the fix is pretty straightforward. But other times not. So I don't think I have anything like great to say here. Unfortunately, this is the cliche thing of like, in machine learning, the more you actually spend time looking at your data, the better you're going to understand your model. And like that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Is there anything the models can't do today that you're like, oh, I just wish we could figure out like, X thing or Y thing on the music side?
Gosh, a ton. I think mostly around all things iterative. Sometimes you get something out that was wrong and you know exactly how it was wrong and you don't have a way to express like do that but change whatever thing X. Like I think that's a big one. There will be lots of other axes of control that we try to give people, but right now, as an example, doesn't really listen to you for how fast you want the music. These are like very loose guidelines for the model, and I think we can do a lot better. BPM is one of those things that has an answer. Yeah. It's either like you either got it or you didn't, and you can quantify objectively, this is how far off I was. And so for things like that, I think we'll see improvements pretty quickly.
Yeah. But what are the metrics that you track, like, to know, hey, we're moving in the right direction here? Like, what are kind of the North Star metrics for Suno?
I think it's like just how much people enjoy the product. And so that's like very, very high level. It's like, how many users are making songs? How many users are coming back day after day to make songs? What is the probability that you will exhaust your free tier? Like that would be a sign of, even if you don't want to pay, that is a sign that you just enjoyed the last several minutes of your life. And then I think increasingly it is like, did you share it? Did you get something shared with you? Because this is kind of a social game ultimately.
As I think about the product experience, one thing that is compelling to anyone that uses it is just it's so fast. Like you really do get it's amazing. I think it's one of these magical experiences the first time you use it, where it's like you're with your 3-year-old, you have this Zamboni idea, and like it's literally there in seconds. Any tips you can share for builders about like how you've gotten this so fast?
I think we have to get a lot faster. Actually, I mean, I'll share some tips in a second, but like. Spotify is an amazing product and has done us the rather unfortunate favor of when you click play on Spotify, it is really fast, and they have spent a lot of time optimizing that. And so that has set a really high bar for us for just people expecting, I click go and I want to hear that song instantly, and we are not nearly as fast as Spotify is. Of course, we have to make the song. So, I think one is just caring about it. It's like just caring to try to improve these things, and just realizing that with every passing 100 milliseconds, someone is increasingly likely to click away and do something else. And it makes the journey of making a song so much worse if you go and you do something else. You don't get sucked into that journey. So I think to a very large degree, it's just caring about it. We use transformers, so we don't make a secret about that. These things are autoregressive, which means that people have probably figured out that we are streaming you the song while we are still making the song, and that helps a lot, let's say, compared to a diffusion-based model. So yet another reason we like transformers, but I really think these things do matter. At the end of the day, you are trying to deliver an experience to somebody around the joys of music, and the user doesn't care what model architecture you use. The user cares, did you deliver me a song quickly, and did it make me feel a certain way? And so just focusing on that is important.
Yeah. And then I guess on like the infrastructure side, I'm curious, like you're one of the few companies that has just experienced like this insane spike of usage. And so I feel like I'm curious anything you just learned about the infrastructure required to support that, and like where we are kind of today in the development of tools for a company like you to, be able to just, seemingly overnight get to 10 million folks generating songs.
Yeah, we're still really early. So I think the tool chain here will definitely evolve. We've been pretty choosy with exactly where we want to innovate and where we want to build stuff and where we want to buy stuff. We make no secret we are big fans and customers of Modal, who help deploy jobs onto GPU infrastructure very, very easily in a way that is just exceedingly developer friendly. I'm not a paid shill here. I just really like the product.
I am a paid shill because we're investors, but
okay.
I appreciate you saying
No, but what that team has built is really an incredible piece of infrastructure, and so we're like very grateful not to have had to innovate there. I think the other thing just to realize is because music and audio in general is behind images and text, a lot of problems are figured out for us by the image and text communities and open source communities. That has been really, really fortunate for us. If you were on the cutting edge doing text and you needed to serve stuff really well, and then you basically needed to write your own continuous batching infrastructure, and then something like VLLM comes out and shows you how to do it, and that just happened kind of before we needed it. And so that's just one example of these things. I think like at a higher level, things will get easier and easier. And in some sense, it's like not, it's a rather unfortunate place to be out in front, because you do have to figure out what right. What are the things that are going to be important. And so I think just for people building, just be very deliberate on where you want to innovate and where you want to not innovate.
I mean, I'd love to talk about audio more broadly too, because obviously you started off building a general audio model. I think your heart was clearly always on the music side. But, obviously it's been a big few weeks in audio with GPT-4o and, the ability to, I feel like now lots of folks' minds have gone racing of like different ways to incorporate audio into AI applications. So I'm curious, like what opportunities you see on the application side.
Yeah, I'm so glad that this wave is happening right now for people to realize that audio is and should be a first-class citizen in this world, and just to realize that it is how the vast majority of human communication happens. So I think we just don't realize how impactful it will be to be able to interact with systems like you do another human being. And that is the quote-unquote obvious ones like customer service. And that is the less obvious ones. Like there are lots of places where we think typing is the most efficient way to interact with it, maybe like code, and it's not. And so I'm like exceedingly open-minded what this can do. Just like I have a horse in this race in the sense that I am one of the worst readers you will ever meet in this life. And just seeing, and so I love doing things face-to-face, and I really hate like email and Slack as a result. But just seeing the ability to start using the most expressive form of communication in other domains, I think for me personally is going to be like kind of amazing. So yeah, I don't know. I'm like very open-minded. I don't think I have any like great insight here to tell you like where you should be looking, where you should be investing your dollars, but it's going to be big.
Well, if you didn't have Suno, is there like something you'd be building right now?
Yeah, it might not even be in music. I don't know. Like Suno, I mean, I love music, but I think, look, actually, AI is really crowded in some sense, right? And so I think it's probably something like really not sexy. I have always had this idea that there's a lot of home infrastructure that is just terrible, and that smart home technology is just terrible. Being able to interact with your house over voice would just be so much more powerful. I can tell Alexa to turn off the lights, but that is like very crude. And like, why can't I tell Alexa to like cook something for me? Totally. Yeah, I think one in particular thing in home infrastructure that is just like a peeve of mine is like plumbing. It's like very opaque. It's very manual. There's no telemetry into your home's plumbing system. I have always thought the hardware was there, 30 years ago to be able to do this stuff, and I don't really know why people aren't doing it. So forced to say I'm going to build another company, it's probably like...
the classic like music startup to plumbing.
Yes, smart
pivot.
sewer pipes.
That's a story that we've seen
Smart sewer
play.
pipes, that's what I want to do.
I love it. I mean, obviously you have kind of built a lot on the audio model side. Where do you think the like general audio model space goes? I mean, obviously you've had companies like 11 Labs that have been really successful, and there's always been this question of like, will OpenAI just kind of subsume that market? Like, are there rooms for lots of audio models out there, or like, do we kind of converge on a few?
I don't know if I'm the right person to answer this question. I'll give you my opinion, which is that increasingly everybody is going to try to do multimodal stuff. And I think it's going to be actually longer than people realize until audio is treated as more than just an interface into an LLM. Like GPT-4o is still it's an extremely impressive interface to the LLM, and I love it, don't get me wrong. And same with 11 Labs. It is an extremely impressive model, but ultimately these things are interfaces into a sense-making layer that is done entirely in text. And I think it is going to be much longer until these things are actually kind of incorporated into one another. And so I think that means that there's a lot longer until, if at all, until there's any consolidation into one giant model. Yeah. I'd throw the question back to you, as someone who looks at the whole space, like text or otherwise, like how much consolidation happens and how much kind of single purpose stuff do you think ends up happening?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question we think about a lot. I mean, I think a lot of the dynamics are also determined by just like the broader tech ecosystem, where there's a lot of people that are very incentivized to have a horse in this race, and not just, they're not to be one provider that happens to be tied up with one of the major tech companies and not the others. And so I think in some senses, you're going to see other model types willed into existence almost because you need, I mean, you're seeing this in the LLM space, right? Like Snowflake, is announced that, or there's rumors they're buying an LLM. Databricks obviously has been super focused on this. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they all need an offering, right? And so I think you'll see that in code. You'll see that in like image video, any category that kind of like takes off. I think there's a lot of folks that want something to work there, and I think that actually will be a counterbalance against us converging on like one single model type.
That's probably good, just given I think how diverse the applications will be when we think about it's not all just like businessy stuff sitting in front of my computer. It's not all logic. It's not all music. It's like, it's lots of stuff. There's going to be robotics. There's going to be healthcare. There's going to be like weird random things like, what does the LLM for chip design look like? Like, how do we put more AI into that? So I think, oh gosh, that makes me really excited.
Obviously, we got you, I guess, a day or two after you announced this big fundraise. And so, one, congratulations.
Thank you.
And two, I'm curious. So you raised $125 million. Usually, I think of raises of that size, being foundation models that are super compute intensive. Like, is that mostly to train models, or like, how do you think about what you go do with this now large sum of cash you got?
It's kind of scale everywhere. So I think it is certainly to train big models. I think music models will not require quite the same level of compute as the biggest text models do in the near future. But that doesn't mean that you don't need an incredible amount of care to do these things. And something that's easy to forget is that music is very far behind. We don't even know the right way to model it. Like in text, more or less everybody is doing very small variants on the same thing, and it's really impressive and it's working. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm very glad everybody's doing that. The right way to model music isn't even worked out. And then I think increasingly I'll say that models will get bigger. Maybe they don't get quite as big because it's not all just a question of scale and get the right answer. There's like taste involved. There's control involved. I do think, though, that it gets increasingly expensive to train these things, not just for the flops, but for the research that has to go into it, for the very specialized data that you need to put into these things, for the axes of control that you need to put into these things. And so that's definitely going to be a big part of it. Obviously, running a company, you need to hire the best people. So that requires a bunch of stuff. I think I am really excited about, we try to think very hard of like, what should the future of music look like? And basically, the way we think about deploying the capital is not exactly train this model, is not exactly hire this team, but is like, how do I more quickly pull forward the future of music that we envision and deploy capital toward that? So there's going to be a lot of stuff coming.
I love that. What are like the music model capabilities that would be meaningful to you? Like, I don't know if there's like, a few milestones that you think about, like, oh, it'd be amazing one day if like, and I think about, we try on the image side, we try the same, when we were evaluating these companies, we'd always try the same prompt, and we'd be like, it would be amazing if one day this prompt was just like nailed perfectly. I don't know if you have any equivalent things where you think about on the music side. You've alluded to some of it earlier, but I'm curious, like, are there some capabilities that would kind of just drop you if you got to the point where they started to work?
There are definitely some. I don't want to give too much away. I think, like, at a very high level, I think people care a lot about like, when is someone going to have a model that makes a 3.5-minute pop song that is like indistinguishable from what a human being would make in a recording studio. And I understand why that seems to be the benchmark. To me, that actually is not that interesting of a milestone, because just because this is not a fact-based thing with objective answers, actually the ceiling is quite a bit higher than that, right? Music is all about how it makes you feel. And so I don't even think we know how to measure it, but like 3.5-minute pop song, indistinguishable from what a human would do in a recording studio, just to me feels like a somewhat artificially constrained.
It'd be kind of disappointing if that's all we got.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming in that direction. What do I want? Like, personally, this is just a me thing, not even a product direction thing, because we're not doing this right now. I want a Vision Pro app because I want to play air guitar with a band. And there's a tremendous amount of technology that would have to get built, like doing stuff in real time enough synchronously to make that a reality would be very, very difficult. But ultimately, I think that is the goal. Like, this is an enjoyable game. And I say game not to cheapen it. I say game because games are things that humans have been doing for millennia. Games are really, really enjoyable. The video game industry is huge. And I want people to be able to interact with this in the most intuitive way possible. And so I think that's really like...
That's so cool. Like, the music would just respond, like, you're strumming slowly and the music's kind of responding to that.
Totally. Maybe actually it's not even air guitar. Maybe I'm a conductor and I have a whole symphony, Like, how amazing would that be? I would play that for hours. We can't do that yet.
I was like, let us know when the Vision Pro app's shipping. I'm
You'll be
excited
the first.
for that.
You'll be the first to know that.
Yeah, let me know when
there's
I
a
can
Vision Pro app.
that seems super fun. I'm curious, like, you know, how you contextualize what's happening in kind of the broader AI and music market. Like, obviously, you know, you've had a few competitors pop up. Like, do you feel like this is a space where, you know, there'll be different kinds of businesses, or like, you know, if you were to fast forward 10, 20 years, is there kind of one big AI music player, or is there kind of, you know, different niches here?
I think this market is ultimately really, really big. I think a whole bunch of technologies, not only AI, but obviously AI has the power to greatly expand the market for music, which is smaller than it should be right now. I would say I'm like, the same way I'm like really excited OpenAI is doing more and more voice because it's showing people that this is a real thing. I'm like very excited that there are people coming into the space because this is a real thing. This is going to grow. I think it's so greenfield right now that I can't imagine that there's so much to do that I can't imagine that there's only one company. I'm like very excited that people are starting to do what we do. But like people will build amazing tools meant for professional artists. It's just not something we're focusing on. Yeah. And those will be great businesses, and those will definitely increase the quality of music that gets made and the amount of music that gets made. It's just not what we focus on. People will go after background music. They already are. Not what we focus on, but that is a huge business if you just think about like how many YouTube videos have background music in them, right? So I think there's just going to be a lot of stuff here. The thing that I am personally the most excited about, though, is the experiences that we can build for the average person. Like when we think about what is the future of music? How do we expand how important music is in people's lives? How do we expand the joy that people have around music? It becomes very obvious framed like that. A, we want to build for the general consumer. I want like my mom doing this. My mom is not a musician. And B, we should just directly build them the experiences that we think they're going to really enjoy.
What's going on in like the IP partnership space? Like I feel like in the image space, a lot of folks have kind of tied up, you know, data sets with, you know, to get kind of copyright approvals. I haven't seen as much happening in like the music world. Like, I don't know if maybe I missed the Taylor Swift announcement, but I don't think there's been like massive partnerships yet on that side. Like, how do you know, I feel like everyone always talks about the Spotify versus Napster approach in the creative spaces. Like, where kind of are we in that today?
We are so early. And I think Spotify and Napster is actually a pretty reasonable analogy. And I think there will be Spotifys and there will be Napsters and there will be people who are excited to work with the industry and grow that. And then there will be people who are excited to work against the industry. And I think that will be uphill. We are obviously very excited to work with the industry. Unlike specific artist partnerships, I think this is a weird one. And it's something that we have, we work very closely with some artists. But when people hear artist partnership, they think like, can I just make new Charlie Puth songs? Or can this is just an opinion. It is something that we have always stayed away from because doing it without the artist's express consent is obviously illegal. But also, again, just an opinion. I think these are very viral moments, and I think these are not as big a part of the future of music as people think. And to me, the analogy is like the first time you played with GPT, you probably remember it. You probably made Shakespeare sonnets about podcasting or Shakespeare sonnets about VC investing. And then those are my two interests. So that had to be one of those two. Yeah, exactly. And then like the third time you did that, you were like, okay, this is a little silly. That doesn't mean GPT isn't wildly helpful. You probably use it every day, right? It's just not for that. And to me, this feels like the same analogy. I think the future of letting people enjoy the process of creating music is not necessarily letting them enjoy making a new song by Charlie Puth, or not necessarily having them have Taylor Swift sing Enter Sandman. But instead, it is allowing them to go on this journey about talking to things about the things that are relevant to them. And so we have always just been like, basically ignoring that kind of stuff and letting other people do it. And it's a flash in the pan as far as I'm concerned. It is very viral and then ultimately kind of fades into the background.
Yeah, I'm sure it's super interesting. Like you may actually end up in a world where those types of platforms onboard people to the possibilities, like to your point, like the Shakespeare sonnets of ChatGPT, where like many of the first times people used it. And then once they like just get exposed to that tech to begin with, they'll kind of realize some of the, they'll stay for some of your use cases.
I think that's right. But I think it would be much more straightforward to just show them the first time the amazing use case. So instead of enjoying making the Shakespeare sonnet and then going to do the, I don't know what your favorite use case for GPT is, like, wouldn't it be swell if you were just like, oh, hey, you have that like messy email where someone pasted a bunch of data and you wanted to format it as JSON, and then like you could just paste that in and get the JSON out immediately, and then like just give people that musical experience. So that's like, yeah, you heard some interesting sounds while you were making coffee this morning. Like, put them here. Let's build a song together, and you will have the best 10 minutes of your life. And that seems like a far more straightforward entree into the art of making music than making some weird cover song. Just an opinion. People can disagree.
I love that. Well, we always like to end our interviews with kind of a quick fire round where we get your quick take on overly broad questions that should probably be their own independent.
Okay, let's do it.
We ask the same thing.
Wait, before you start, I'll tell you, because you mentioned Langchain and Harrison Chase before, so I'll take the opportunity to plug him. He's amazing. When we used to work together, he would have.
Yeah. What was in the water back at Kensho? Maybe I'll have to ask you that. Like, why are there so many amazing AI founders?
Kensho is the talent density there was just amazing, and the founder, who is a close friend, I think maybe I've modeled myself on this. Just found so much personal enjoyment working with great people. I think at Kensho I like was so happy to be the dumbest guy in the room, and I continue to do that at Suno. So it's if you have no ego, it is really fun being around people who are just really, really capable. And Harrison is one of them. He had this thing where he would just be like, he called them hot takes. It's like, I'm just going to tell you something very fast. It's like only 80% true, but you have to let that last 20% go, because there's like that nugget of truth is like really, really good. And so let's see how many hot takes we can get through.
Amazing. All right. Well, then I'm excited with that preamble. I guess the first is just like one thing that's overhyped and one thing that's underhyped in the AI world today.
Ooh. Okay, I'll give you a hot take. I think open source is overhyped.
Interesting. Why?
Yeah, I think just open source software is amazing. Open source AI is really tough just because of the barriers to doing it right now. And so it's not obvious to me that you don't want much more explicit financial incentives to make the best stuff. And I'll caveat, like, that is why you see the best open source stuff coming out of Meta, right? Who has the financial resources to do what they need to do. Right.
You just think that as compute costs increase for each subsequent generation of these models, it's going to be super hard for open source to catch up without a business model?
Certainly in the short term. Yeah.
And what about underhyped? I don't know if there's anything that's underhyped in AI today. It all feels
There's
pretty,
a lot. Can I say music? You're not going to let me get away with that one.
I mean, I'd hope you believe that. So
I think music is underhyped. I think music is just underhyped. Forget even in AI, just as a part of people's lives. I'm going to go with that.
I love that. What's been like the biggest surprise in building AI features for Suno? So maybe like one thing you thought would work that just didn't, or one thing that you're like, I don't know what we're doing here, and it actually ended up working out super well.
I think letting people feel the downstream impacts of their music has worked out really, really well. And so that is letting people feel proud of what they made. And that is proud on a micro level of making it really easy to just text somebody a song, and proud at a macro level of somebody getting a good enough song that they hit our showcase. I'll tell you just like a funny anecdote which surprised us. You can edit your song title. Like if you mess it up by accident, you type in the wrong thing, you can go back and edit it. And what we found is that when people would hit our trending page, they would go and edit their song titles to put their names in the song titles, because it feels good to feel proud of it. And I think that's something to lean into, not to shy away from. Like, people should feel proud of what they do. So I think that worked out better than expected. Something that didn't work out great. At the beginning, we owned some of our own hardware. Actually, the first thing we did when we left Kensho was buy a couple of GPU boxes that are now just collecting dust. So didn't really realize the scale of what would be required, and you can't run that at home.
What's something like you've changed your mind on since building Suno? Maybe something, a hypothesis you had about the business in the beginning that you're like, yeah, that was wrong.
I think one of the biggest things I got wrong was Discord. So I thought we would be on Discord for much longer than we did. And don't get me wrong, I love Discord, and we have an amazing community there. But I looked at something like Midjourney that is only on Discord and getting just a tremendous amount of usage, and thought that we would be there much, much longer. And then I'll give you like one interesting number is last November, we shipped a very thin underpowered web app that didn't even have all of the functionality of the Discord. And it took 5 days before 90% of the usage was on the web. And it is, I think, for building experiences, we are not building a music model. We are building experiences, and the experience has to be the entire experience needs to be pleasant. And so Discord is just, it's a messaging platform, and it's amazing, but it is not the right place for an all-encompassing music experiment. And so I got that one totally wrong.
Yeah. What if, I mean, I feel like there's so many, AI consumer apps that are navigating Discords and community management. Like, anything you've learned around that, where, how you guys kind of engage with the broader community that you think you've gotten better at?
I'm so fortunate we have this community. Yeah. It's like, that we've gotten better at. It is, I'm just, it's in some sense, it's simultaneously a lot easier and a lot harder to listen to 300,000 people. There's a lot of signal that's there. It is maybe a little bit harder to cut through some of the noise at 300,000 people, but I think the product would not be where it is today without that community and the leaders and moderators of that community. Like, it is just such an underappreciated resource. And so maybe I'll go back to the last thing. And I said, like, I thought we would be on Discord forever. If we had never launched our product on Discord, our Discord would be actually a lot smaller, and then we would not have that incredible resource. And so I'm not sure I would change very much from how we did it. It was just a lot of learning.
Yeah. Which AI startup outside of music and audio are you most excited about?
Oh gosh. I want some physical hardware. I like, one day I will have.
Is that the physics PhD in you?
It might be one. It's missing soldering stuff, I suppose. I want some piece of physical hardware. I don't think I have a company in mind per se. I think. I mentioned Modal just because as someone who builds on top of it, I think that developer experience is like amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't need to. I've already plugged some friends' companies. I'll shut up now.
Okay, well, I definitely, as the second to last thing, I think I'm going to pioneer this, which is I feel like we're obviously going to have to use and very joyfully use Suno generated music for the intro and outro of this episode.
Excellent.
I'd love for you to create the intro song now.
Okay, let's do it.
I'd love to see you do it. What should we kick this episode off with?
I don't know. It's got to be about unsupervised learning, right?
That could be about. It could really be about about anything here. But I'd love to see the guru of Suno.
I'm not great at it. Another thing that the community is amazing for is teaching us how to use these models. It's like crowdsourcing prompt engineering basically. So I don't know. Let's say a bouncy trap song about unsupervised learning. Let's see what comes out there.
Unsupervised learning, no inhibitions. I'm a machine, no doubt I'm on a mission. Shredding data like it's my composition. Unleashed on the beat, I'm a lyrical beast. Analyze get ready for the feast. Unsupervised, I'm breaking all the rules, finding hidden gems.
Well, I feel like folks are going to want to pull on a bunch of threads we talked about here. I know they're going to want to go find that song we just generated too. And so what is the best way for folks to learn more about, the work you're doing at Suno?
Yeah, definitely come use the product, suno.com. Very, very easy to just start making songs. Takes a second. We're hiring primarily on the East Coast, but also some remote. So New York, Cambridge, Massachusetts, and everywhere in the world. And then, we're always interested to hear, like I said, it's just so early in this game. We're always interested to hear people's ideas of what the future of music is. And that is total novices, that is experts, that is everyone in between. I think at this point in the arc of things, there's just so much to do. And there's no way we think about everything. And so we're exceedingly open-minded to what can be possible.
Totally. Well, I have to say, as a Boston native, I think it is so cool that one of the most innovative companies in AI is being built in out of Cambridge.
Thank you. I don't know why it's so surprising to people, but it is. I think, there's obviously one of the world's best music schools is in Boston. Some of the world's best universities are in Boston. So to me, it's not shocking, but I think totally, I will take the love. Let's see if we can get you to move back to Boston.
So, hey, maybe the first of many. But Mikey, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Rashad, I was so happy to have the creator of the product of that song that I basically had to send you after you tried to set up a podcast. Essentially full studio.
Should we give people the full context on what happened?
We're going to have to put this song in the debrief here.
I want to play it right now here.
Basically,
I sent it to my girlfriend.
You sent what? It must have been like a dozen boxes to my house, and they all just showed up one day.
No. Let's backtrack. You said you want a good studio set up in your apartment so that we could record virtual episodes of this podcast and Vital Signs. And I said, okay, but like podcast equipment is very bulky. Are you cool with me sending a ton of shit to your place? And then I sent you a bunch of Amazon boxes, and then your wife got mad at you, and then we started.
Are you saying it didn't deserve the full devastating country song about how hard it was to have this many packages just out and around my house?
I've actually listened to that song for like a week. It's
Rashad, what you trying to do?
It's just so good.
I think country is the move for Suno.
Country is usually where I go with Suno. Hip hop's not bad either, but country is usually my go-to.
Maybe we'll link it with all the other references.
Exactly.
The Zamboni song and everything. He was awesome. I like that guy.
Mikey's awesome.
I think I caught him say like, "This is the most exciting thing," or "I'm so excited about like whatever." He's just such an optimist.
Yeah. You also know he's a physics PhD. He's like a Renaissance man.
Yeah.
He's obviously super humble, but incredibly smart.
Yeah. He also shilled modal for us, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, did I know that Suno was a big modal customer? Yes. So, maybe a little bit of leading the witness, but.
He went ham on investors a little bit, blaming investors for what was he trying to say about like why VCs are messing with the like pricing models for these tools? That
I think that like he's basically like, look, you know, all these VCs in the last decade have learned, you know, the SaaS pricing model. That's what they expect to see, and subscription And all the metrics of VC have been optimized around that. And like, it might not make sense in the context of AI.
And so what is a founder to do in that situation? Like they're getting pressure from the board because the board's like, we need to be making revenue, but at the same time,
I don't even know it's about pressure. I think it's more just about a pricing model. And I think his point is, you know, in the SaaS world, you basically don't have much marginal cost. Like once you give someone a subscription and, you know, there's not like them using the tool doesn't add a lot to your underlying cost.
I see.
But the difference is, you know, if you give someone a Suno license and they run it 100,000 times, like you pick up a pretty hefty bill.
Right.
And on the compute side. And so I think that, you know, I appreciate his honesty. Like everyone I think is trying to figure out like what is the right pricing model given the amount of times you use these models are exactly, you know, correlated to your underlying cost.
Yeah, 100%. He said they were intentionally not innovating on pricing, which I feel like we've heard from a couple of our guests as well.
I mean, I think like it's so clear from hearing him talk that he feels like they're in like the top of the first inning of like this entire thing where, you know, the behavior they want is kind of you hear the sound and you spontaneously create something and you're jamming with friends and they're obviously seeing glimmers of it. Like I loved how excited he got about that Twitch stream and seeing someone, you know, creating live and people watching. There's early signs that there's fit there. But I feel like he thinks this is so far from the end state of where it goes. Like, why kind of figure out the pricing, now? And clearly, I think that the success of the company and the funding they've raised, there's lots of people that feel similarly.
What did you think about the Twitch streamer thing? Did you know what he was talking about with the
I didn't personally watch that, but I love that. I your mind gets racing when you hear him talk about this future of co-creation and this idea that the same way we go to hear jazz musicians riff off each other, like people that are really good at kind of creating these songs from scratch or riffing. You even imagine comedians incorporating this into their routines. It's cool. I think to his point, maybe music just becomes more of a fundamental, an easy thing to incorporate into lots of.
He made a couple references to Charlie Puth. Have you seen the video he's talking about where Jimmy Fallon, I think, is interviewing him, and he brings out the music producer desk thing, and then he records himself hitting a mug with a spoon, and it makes a little ding sound, and then he pitches that down, and then he makes a whole beat on it, and the video is super viral. So I mean, there's definitely something there with the live creation process of
totally, and just how much fun you can tell he so viscerally lives his own product. He loves, I think that whole. I think we've all been a part of those of us who I grew up playing music, and it's totally true. There's nothing more fun than kind of being in one of those jam sessions with your friends, regardless of where it goes, regardless of how.
Were you good? Are you good?
I wouldn't say I'm good. No, okay. I think. Mikey was saying on the way out that he has a disappointed piano teacher, and I think my piano teacher is also disappointed.
You asked him about metrics, what metrics is he tracking, and he was basically how much do people love the product? It was basically.
But it's interesting, right? Because there's so many different things you could optimize for. He talked, if I remember correctly, there's obviously the number of creations, and there's do you come back and do you kind of blow through your free credits? But optimizing for that can also be pretty different than optimizing for sharing. And is this kind of a social experience? And
yes.
And I think
the Wordle effect.
Yeah. I haven't heard it coined like that, but I like that. Yeah, I think there's like this interesting, I feel like it's a very good single player product right now. And I mean, clearly you can tell top of mind for him is how do you make this like this collaborative, thing you want to share with your friends type experience.
Multiplayer is
because honestly the most fun, I create a fair amount of Suno music, but you and I just laughing over our song is like, it's way more fun than just like the random thing I sit on top of.
Yeah, 100%. He had a hot take about open source that it's overrated.
I think what was behind that point, which makes sense, is that basically, I think he thinks the state-of-the-art models are going to continue to be super compute intensive and cost a lot, and unless you have a business that can support putting that amount of compute, it's not totally clear yet what the business model of a lot of these open source companies are, and so that's obviously in tension with the fact that it feels like if you just stay 6 months behind state of the art, the cost of training these models is actually quite low and not super expensive, and so I think. Since we've started this podcast, I feel like we always ask, closed versus open. And I thought the reality we all feel is like they're both going to be big markets.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure one is just going to eat the other.
People always say, I feel like the takeaway I always hear is that like GPT is ahead, so it's going to stay ahead in that way it's going to sort of like own most of the market. Do you subscribe to that? Like, is that how you look at it?
Well, I think that like people are constantly we're still like the early days of just finding use cases for like these LLMs. And so I think that basically, as we discover use cases, inevitably the open source models get good enough to whatever we discovered like a year ago with like GPT-3, or even, now what we're discovering with GPT-4, in 6-12 months, the open source models will be good enough to do whatever those things are, whether it's writing, summarizing your emails or generating marketing copy or some of these early use cases that we've seen today. Of course, a year from now, GPT-5, whatever the latest state-of-the-art models, there'll be a whole new set of use cases they can do. And so I think the case for these closed source models is just the most economically valuable stuff will always be at the frontier, what the state-of-the-art models can do. But all the while those things are being discovered, a year later, they're potentially possible in the open source world. I've been looking forward to getting Mikey on for a while. He's been the inspiration of a lot of our. I think our title track here is generated on Suno, and we obviously introduced our LPs to some of the Suno music.
I think this is our first live demo, also.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite AI product that I use day to day. It's most fun, that's for sure. That was Unsupervised Learning. A huge thanks to Mikey for just a fantastic episode. Definitely stay tuned next week. We'll have another great entrepreneur or leader in the AI space. And if you're really enjoying this, please share with a friend. We're trying to get the word out, continue to grow the great listener base we have. So appreciate you tuning in, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
I'm a machine, no doubt I'm on a mission. Shredding data like it's my composition. Unleashed on the beat, I'm a lyrical beast. Analyzing patterns, get ready for the feast. Unsupervised, I'm breaking all the rules, finding hidden gems. I'm no regular fool.